last week. Sometimes we watch the same thing. Sometimes we'll pick something for the other one to watch, and or sometimes we just watch something completely different than the other one, and we have absolutely no idea what the other one's talking about.
Yes. This week we converged on Smokey and the Bandit,
Yes. Yeah. Smoking in the Bandit.
which for once I can say this phrase, Daniel had never seen all the way through.
No, I'd never seen it all the way through. Just seen parts of it.
This was like my third time through, so that was like, ha! I finally have a classic movie up on you.
Yes. And of course, then after that, we get into box office and then do our topics. So
Yes.
yeah, so not to bury the lead now. Yeah, I had never seen this movie all the way through. I'd seen parts of it on TV, when it would
Hmm.
pop up every now and then, but never watched it from beginning to end. And it's I can see why people enjoyed this movie when it came out back in 1977. And we actually looked up the box office numbers before the show, and it did very well.
$4 million budget, 126 million domestic haul, and which inflation adjusted is like over half a billion. So
Yeah.
it, this movie was a big deal, and it's almost it's hard to realize how big of a deal it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
like this was I don't know if it started the trucker craze of the 70s, but it definitely poured fuel on that fire.
Yeah, and also it boosted the sales of Trans Ams and CB radios.
Yes. Uh, so Smokey and the Bandit is the story of Burt Reynolds' character, the titular Smokey.
Bandit.
Bandit. God dang it. I had one job, DB. You had one job. Anyway,
That's all
the
right.
titular bandit. Smokey is our police chief over there. And this actually is, this movie is a very interesting little piece of history because
Mhm.
at the time, you couldn't sell Coors beer west of the Mississippi.
Right, because and not for the reasons they mentioned in the movie. The reason you couldn't get Coors east of Texas was because of the way the beer was made,
Yep.
and if they went past a certain point, it would spoil.
Right. Because like the whole point of Coors and why it was desirable was because it didn't have any preservatives in it.
Right.
And so at the time, it was all made in Colorado, so you couldn't, if you took it out too far in the trucks at the time, which weren't refrigerated,
Hmm.
you would have a bad batch of Coors.
Yes.
Well, nowadays, this is solved by having more breweries around the country and having refrigerated trucks and train cars.
Right. Yeah. And but in the movie, it's illegal to sell Coors east of Texas, and it's considered bootlegging.
How?
And
So this makes our so this makes for our ticking clock here as Bandit and his good buddy the Snowman have
mhm,
to get a truckload of Coors to Georgia
right. Yeah, they got to go from they start in Atlanta and they have to go to Texarkana and then back in 28 hours.
because they're thirsty in Atlanta, so we're going to Texarkana.
Yeah.
The song tells you the plot.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, then of course there isn't much plot in this movie, and that's perfectly fine.
Yes, this movie is a series of character scenes and action stunts.
Yeah.
It- Uh,
And yeah.
now, of course, the complication that they run into. So, oh yeah, so we should mention that Bandit is basically he's driving that Trans Am on their cover here,
Yeah.
and his job is basically to smoke out police officers or traffic cops so that
Hmm.
their truck can just blaze on through, ignoring the speed limit.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, and of course the complication is the fact that Bandit, Burt Reynolds, he has to stop in the middle of the road because he runs into Sally Field, who's a runaway bride,
Yep.
and And of course, she's running away because she was supposed to marry the sheriff, the police chief's son. Of course, the police chief is of course played by the legendary Jackie Gleason.
Who is the highlight of this movie, in my
Oh
opinion.
yes, yes he is, and of course, apparently from what I read, they created the character of his son Junior because
Hmm.
he needed somebody to play off of.
Which explains, he's very quiet through most of the movie.
Yes, yeah, and but yeah, yeah, there are a lot of great, yeah. There's so many funny scenes in this movie that they probably couldn't do today, or they might be able to do it.
Uh, I feel like this one is tame enough that you could get away with it. You just
Yeah,
I know the one you're talking about though,
yeah,
where
yeah,
he's talking. So okay, so you might go, wait a second. He's a sheriff and he's chasing down this car. Doesn't he lose jurisdiction as soon as he leaves Texas? Yes, yes, he does.
yeah,
So he keeps getting into some sort of conflict with the local sheriffs as he goes along too.
yeah.
And one time, like he's talking with a black sheriff, and when he runs into him, boy, get me the sheriff. I am the sheriff. Oh, my apologies. On the phone, you sounded taller. And walks away like, what is this world coming to? Like that's the most out there joke. And even then, I feel like you could possibly do that today because the joke isn't like, haha, isn't it funny that he's racist? It's wow, this asshole's racist.
Yeah. And yeah, and of course there's his and his great use of the phrase "some bitch."
I even found uh, I even was it, he in one scene he orders a Diablo sandwich, and I even went looking
Yeah,
for like what is a Diablo sandwich, and there is like no defined definition of what a Diablo sandwich is.
yeah,
So you just have people online trying their version of it. Like,
yeah. I think the best description for it is a spicy sloppy Joe,
you know,
basically. Yeah,
which I
and
found the recipe. I will probably make it for myself at some point, but
yeah. But yeah, that was a funny scene too, where he's in the diner with Bandit, and of course he doesn't recognize Bandit's voice.
yeah, uh, man, they should totally sue the makers of Die Hard. Totally ripped off that whole idea from them.
Oh yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, this movie, it's a lot of fun. It's funny, and I will say too, like the the problem a lot of comedies like this kind of fall into is that they tend to get really zany and wacky during the climax.
Hmm.
And this movie the climax is a little zany and wacky, but not over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to the next movie. I decided I signed into Netflix and said, "Oh, you should try watching Smokey and the Bandit too." And it's like, okay, why not? I'll tell you why not right now. So we were talking about things being zany and wacky.
Hmm.
Um, the people who had hired them in the first movie are running for governor. I should say the father is and his son is helping him out.
Okay.
The opening scene is his rival who they found some like World War II bombers or something, and they bombed his one of his campaign events with literal mounds of bullshit.
Oh God.
And he retaliated with the same scheme with I'm not sure what that orange powder was. Maybe I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Um, and so the governor says, who is a Republican, says, "Yeah, I would endorse a Dallas cheerleader before either of you chuckleheads." And so the guy gets the idea that you know the so the plot of the movie is that he has to hire Smokey and the Bandit again. God damn, why do I keep doing this?
I don't know.
Snowman and the Bandit again
Yeah.
to uh, to get a elephant from Florida back to Texas in time for the GOP convention.
Oh jeez.
So like the wackiness levels are already at critical levels. But I thought, okay,
Yeah.
I mean, and Frog there, Sally Fields had left him. I was going to be marrying Smokey's kid again? Question mark.
Oh.
But I hit the and Bandit had fallen into the gutter and was just like a alcoholic mess. So
Oh,
very Jake Skywalker.
oh, jeez.
And I gave up partway through the first scene with Jackie Gleason because I said, okay, his character made that last movie, and his
Hmm.
first scene wasn't terribly funny.
Oh,
Uh, Now I hope that that's one of those things. And they also even had another song by the same group that was explaining this new plot.
oh,
You know,
jeez.
so they basically made the same movie again. This is one of those. Hey, strike while the iron's hot. Well, the actors get a bigger payday because now we know it's a thing.
Yeah, yeah,
So good for everybody for getting to do some work and having some fun. But it's
yeah, yeah. I mean, I completely understand why they would do a sequel, given that this movie made so much money.
yes,
I mean, it was the second highest grossing movie in 1977 behind Star Wars. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
that's yeah,
and okay. So if we look at their trajectory, the second one made about half as much as the first one, which is
mhm,
but it had like I said, the first one was like a classic slow roll. Opening
yeah,
weekend 1.7 million.
mm,
So that's like 100 times
yeah,
legs though, which is really impressive.
yeah,
The second
and
one opened big and kind of made half as much as the previous one. And
yeah,
then they made a third one for some reason, long after the CB radio phase was dead, and yeah,
yeah,
it
yeah,
its opening weekend was suspiciously identical to the first one, down to
yeah.
the dollar according to the numbers, 1.728060, but its worldwide box office was like 7 million.
Oof.
So that was Burt Reynolds even in this? Let's I
Oh God. Yeah,
now I'm curious. I have to imagine he got out of it
yeah. I don't think he was in that. I
by
know.
by
I
1983.
well. I know. I mean, I don't even get. Jackie. Well, was Jackie Gleason even alive when they did the third
Let's
movie?
find out. To
Or-
Wikipedia, the found yep, okay, Jackie Gleason was in it.
Wow.
However, I'm noticing a lack of the name Burt Reynolds because by 1983, Burt Reynolds was too big of a star for this crap.
Yeah.
So I guess our overall review is just watch the first one.
Yeah, just watch the first one. Yeah,
Although,
yeah, like we said, it's on Netflix. So I don't know if it's on anywhere
well,
else, but I mean, you might catch it on TV every now and then because I know sometimes they might show it on TV, but I don't. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, Although looking at this trailer here, it's kind of a shame that it's not very good because the still image on the trailer is Sheriff Buford T. Justice doing his take on Patton's speech.
Oh, jeez.
So
Oh,
anyway,
yeah,
sometimes things are best left in the past, which may come up in a minute. But let's get on
yeah,
to
yeah.
our weekly